The rain fell in thin silver needles across the city streets, blurring the neon lights and washing dust from tired sidewalks, when Ethan Carter stepped out of his black sedan and adjusted the collar of his coat, not knowing that this ordinary evening would rewrite the meaning of success in his life forever. Ethan was the youngest CEO in the region, a self-made tech entrepreneur who had built his empire from late nights, broken relationships, and relentless ambition. But behind the headlines and awards was a single father still, learning how to balance boardrooms with bedtime stories. His 8-year-old daughter Lily was waiting at home with the babysitter, probably coloring suns and butterflies, unaware that her father was about to collide with a story far greater than any spreadsheet. Ethan had stopped by a modest grocery store on his way home, the kind of place where flickering lights hummed and the floor tiles carried the footprints of working families, because Lily had asked for strawberry yogurt and bread for school sandwiches, and he liked to pretend that these simple errands made him feel normal. Inside, the store smelled of warm bread and damp coats, and as Ethan pushed his cart down the narrow aisle, he noticed a boy standing near the clearance shelf, clutching a small basket with trembling hands. The boy couldn't have been older than 10, thin as a reed, with worn sneakers and a jacket 2 sizes too big, his dark eyes darting nervously toward the checkout counter, where the manager stood arguing with a tired-looking cashier. Ethan didn't think much of it at first, until he heard the boy's small voice crack through the hum of refrigerators and murmurs of, "Customers, please don't take our food. My mom is sick," the words falling like fragile glass. The manager, a bulky man with a stiff uniform, frowned and pointed at the basket, accusing the boy of trying to leave without paying for a can of soup and a loaf of bread. The boy's hands shook harder as he hugged the basket to his chest, tears pooling at the corners of his eyes as he repeated, "I wasn't stealing. I just don't have enough money. I only took what she needs." And in that moment, something inside Ethan tightened. A deep, aching memory surfacing from years ago, when he himself had once stood in line with empty pockets and heavy pride. Before he even realized it, Ethan walked forward, placing a firm yet calm hand on the counter and saying, "How much is it?" The manager looked up, surprised, and muttered the total, and Ethan pulled out his card without hesitation, paying not only for the boy's items but also for a small bag of groceries. He added quietly to the counter. The boy stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief, as if a miracle had stepped out of the rain, whispering a shaky, "Thank you, sir." But Ethan shook his head gently and knelt to the boy's level, asking his name. "My name is Noah," the boy said softly, wiping his cheeks with the sleeve of his jacket. "And my mom. She's been sick for weeks. She can't work anymore." Ethan felt a strange pull, a tug he couldn't ignore, and asked where they lived, but Noah hesitated, fear flashing in his eyes as if worried that kindness always came with conditions. Ethan smiled reassuringly and said he only wanted to make sure. Noah got home safely in the rain, and after a long pause, the boy nodded and pointed toward the door. Outside, the storm had grown heavier, and Ethan opened his umbrella, guiding Noah to the car despite the boy's protest that he didn't want to trouble him. During the short drive through dimly lit streets and crumbling buildings, Noah spoke in fragments about hospital visits, overdue rent, and nights when dinner was just tea and crackers, while Ethan listened in silence, his chest tightening with every word. They stopped in front of an old apartment, block with peeling paint and broken stair railings, and Noah thanked Ethan again, before rushing inside with the groceries pressed tightly to his chest like treasure. Ethan watched from the car as the boy disappeared into the darkness of the stairwell. And for the first time in years, the success he had chased so fiercely felt hollow and incomplete. That night, after tucking Lily into bed and listening to her sleepy voice ask about the rain, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Noah's trembling hands and desperate eyes, and he lay awake staring at the ceiling, haunted by the question of how many other children were standing in grocery stores, begging for mercy while the world looked away. The next morning, instead of heading straight to his office tower of glass and steel, Ethan found himself driving back to that same neighborhood with bags of groceries in the trunk and a strange mix of nerves and determination in his heart. He climbed the stairs slowly, the smell of damp concrete and old paint filling his lungs, and knocked gently on the door Noah had pointed out. There was a long pause before the door creaked open, revealing a pale woman wrapped in a thin blanket, her face tired but gentle, surprise flickering across her eyes when she saw a well-dressed stranger standing in the hallway. Before she could speak, Noah rushed forward from behind her, his face lighting up with recognition as he exclaimed, "Mom, it's him. The man from the store." The woman's eyes filled with tears as she understood what had happened, and she invited Ethan inside with hesitant gratitude. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished, but clean with sunlight filtering through thin curtains and illuminating a framed photo of Noah and his mother, smiling on a beach years ago, before illness and hardship had rewritten their lives. Ethan placed the groceries on the table, assuring her that he didn't expect anything in return, and as they talked he learned that her name was Maria, that she had once worked 2 jobs to support Noah, and that a sudden illness had drained their savings and stolen her strength, leaving them trapped in a cycle of bills and fear. As Maria spoke, her voice cracked not with self-pity but with quiet desperation to keep her son fed and safe, and Ethan felt something shift inside him, a deep resolve forming where ambition used to live. He promised to return later that day with medicine and help. And as he stood to leave, Noah grabbed his hand tightly and said, "Thank you for believing me." A simple sentence that struck Ethan harder than any award speech. Walking back down the stairs, Ethan realized that this was no longer just about helping one family, but about confronting the invisible stories hidden behind closed doors all across the city, and he knew that his power, his money, and his influence could no longer be used only to build profits, but must also be used to build hope. As he stepped into the sunlight, the rain finally stopping and the clouds beginning to part, Ethan didn't yet know the storm of challenges and enemies that awaited him for choosing compassion over convenience, but he felt ready to face them, because for the first time in years, his heart felt heavier with purpose than with pride. And as this chapter of the story closes, remember this moment, because what Ethan decides to do next will change not only Noah and Maria's lives, but his own daughter's future, his company's direction, and the fate of many families who have never been seen or heard. If this story touched your heart so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter will reveal secrets, struggles, and powerful transformations you won't want to miss. Chapter 2 is where everything changes.